All right, we've got our context, our snow globe of moral turpitude happening in a story. And then within this world, we insert a protagonist. Now, a lot of stories, I would say the vast majority of the stories, at least here that are published, that I've read in America, that I've seen in America, are typically going to be heroes on some level. And what a hero is going to depend entirely on the genre. So with some, it's going to be like properly like Aragorn level from the Lord of the Rings, where you can't find a flaw in this man. He's absolutely incredible, and you know, he might as well be wearing shiny armor and be mounted on a horse and rescuing the princess and stuff like that. So like fairy tale level like morality and ethics and ability. But you could also just have like the person who's just struggling to get by, and they're just, you know, they have a dream. They just want to bake muffins, bread, and just bring joy to someone's home. And so they're just trying to create a bakery while they're working a full-time job, or they're a mother of 3 or whatever it is, and they're trying to like chip away at real life while pursuing their dreams. So it could be that level where it's not like life and death kind of a thing, and they're not necessarily wearing snowy white and doing the romantic fairy tale type thing as a hero, but they are the protagonist. They're the people who deserve the happy ending on some level, whatever that looks like for the story and the context. So you've got those, and the whole spectrum of them interacting with the moral context of the story. Now, the moral context of the story is important because usually you have the moral context of the world and the story where the protagonist is aligned with that, where they get it, they understand it, they're trying to do the right thing, they're trying to operate within the rules, they're trying to do the thing. It's just they have to overcome some conflict, or they have to, you know, figure out a way around this bill, or they have to figure out a way to, you know, hustle a little bit harder, or find the right ally, or find the right guy or girl, or, you know, something like that. But for the most part, we look at the moral context of the world, we see the protagonist, and we know that they deserve everything good that world has to offer. They just don't have it yet, right? And that's a hero, and they're not necessarily gonna fight with the moral structure of the story, but they might fight with like a tiny village within the moral structure. Like there's something that's limiting them on some level, and they kind of have to figure out a way through that, and in order to get into like the freedom of their world and the moral structure. And they're the hero, and they're doing their thing, and it's great. An anti-hero is somebody who like sees and acknowledges, oh yeah, okay, totally, I see the moral structure, this is amazing, this context, I see it, I'm going that way. And they just have a completely different, they're like, respect it, totally, you are correct, this is a great way for the world to run. I'm not gonna operate on that level most of the time. But usually there's also a code that they have that kind of like keeps them on the hero side. So there's a limit, that there's a line that both that anti-hero and the moral context of their story will not cross. And so they're in agreement and alignment in some way with the moral context, but not fully. They still kind of go, yeah, but I think there's another way that I would prefer, because I want something that your moral context says I can't have. And that works for other people, it's not gonna work for me. Now, that person is going, that protagonist, again, they're the person who deserves the happy ending that's coming. They're the person who is going to go through the character arc. They're the person they're the vehicle for us to engage this world. And they're going to create a lot more friction for the reader, especially because anti-heroes usually don't fully align with the reader or the moral context, because the moral context often is something that the reader recognizes and to a certain degree agrees with. So the moral context, the reader have one framework, and then you put an anti-hero in there, usually someone that the reader likes. They have an investment in this person and it's amazing and they just want to see them do well. So we've got some internal conflict in the reader looking at an anti-hero who's going against the moral context. So as soon as you put a regular hero, into a moral context, they just kind of have to figure out a way to find their groove within that moral context, right? The anti-hero doesn't want to work within that. So automatically, just by existing within this moral context with a reader watching, you have two automatic conflicts happening because the reader is following this anti-hero. They have all the secrets and the reader is conflicted within themselves about whether or not this person is a hero, whether or not they should be rooting for them, whether or not they deserve their happy ending, whether or not they're actually going to learn their lesson and shape up and fit well within the moral context. And then you've also got the moral context that is going to have to interact with this character. So I find this fascinating because we haven't even gotten into the actual conflict of the story that the person of the character sparks with somebody else in that context. We haven't gotten to the story. We're literally looking at one character and the world with a viewer involved. That's it. And you suddenly have so much happening here, and I love that so much. So it's so good. So anyway, so we're gonna kind of get into two examples that I love. I've been so excited about this video for a week. I've been plotting. So if you've never watched these shows, go watch them. They're amazing. I have my easy one, which is going to be, I say easy, White Collar. White Collar is a show about Neal Caffrey, who is a con artist and criminal, who in the trailer, I'm not spoiling anything, in the trailer gets caught by Peter Burke, the FBI guy, and Peter Burke puts him in jail and then eventually gives Caffrey the opportunity to be a confidential informant, and they go out and they get all the bad guys in New York. Moral context is the world of New York, specifically in the FBI white collar division. So that's a very specific world and moral context where bad guys have to be brought to justice within the framework of the American FBI in New York. Now, that's that. And Peter Burke is one of our protagonists. He is one of our characters, and he is the epitome, the personification of this moral context. Now, Neal Caffrey is our con artist, lovable protagonist who is the anti-hero. And he literally, from the beginning, knows 100% what this is. He can define it. He knows exactly where the lines are. And he knows that Peter Burke personifies this. But the interesting thing is, he doesn't want to be Peter Burke. And he doesn't want to be here. He wants to be here. So, but the thing is, he has a couple of lines that he will not cross. So he is the hero. He doesn't want to hurt people. He doesn't do guns. And he's loyal. So he has he has a lot of the trappings of the hero, and he goes through his arc. But the anti-hero part is he like, he will work with Peter Burke. He loves Peter Burke. He respects him. He 100% points out Peter and goes, this is the moral center of this world, undoubtedly. And he goes, but this is shiny and I really want that. And so he's constantly balancing his genuine loyalty and job fulfillment and work of being a CI, while also still being a criminal and seeing how much he can get away with. He's a fascinating character and stresses me out so much. It's great. I love it, because he views the world in a way that I never have, and so I really have to like have some wine handy or something. Like, I'm like, okay, we're gonna watch Neal Caffrey. It's fine. It's gonna be great. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful. He's an incredible character, and he grows a lot, and he does some amazing character arcs. And you see how his perspective on the moral context of the show shifts. / he never stops being an anti-hero, because that is what the show set out to create, is an anti-hero who's charming and does so much good, and at the same time, if he can steal that Lamborghini, he's gonna steal that Lamborghini, and he's gonna sleep super well that night, probably because he like conned somebody out of an amazing hotel room in France, and he's just gonna sleep great. So that's Neal Caffrey from White Collar, and that's the context, or that's how an anti-hero plays with the reader. The viewer stresses me out. It makes me have to go through a bit of a character arc as I'm watching this. Like, do I agree with Neal on this one? Do I agree with the moral context? And some of the things that he chooses to do, some of the lines that he chooses to cross, sometimes is more moral than this guy. And so it really makes the reader have to process things that we don't necessarily do on a daily basis. And I really like that aspect of an anti-hero, because you like this character so much that it challenges your own assumptions about your moral context and his goals and what is actually a good goal. Because a lot of times we're just told, in our world, that this is right, this is wrong, this is expectations and stuff like that. And a lot of us spend a lot of time blindly following that, and eventually we have to go, wait, why am I doing that? That doesn't make sense. And we have to like go to therapy, right? So I really like anti-heroes, because they have the ability, the superpower of challenging the reader and the moral context while still going through a completely different arc. And it's a beautiful trifecta of arcs that are happening, and I absolutely adore it. So this one's a long video, so I'm gonna leave the next one. Nate Ford from Leverage is gonna be our hero. He's one of my favorite, it's one of my favorite TV shows of all time. It's incredible, and stay tuned. So I will see you very shortly.